Hello there. I wasn't going to make a video this week, which I appreciate that YouTube creators say every so often, but it's yeah, been a really difficult week, and I'm really struggling with routine or the lack thereof. So I thought it might be helpful in some way to make a video today. But also, I have a really dreadful memory, as I'm sure many of you know, because I've spoken about it a few times. So for me, part of the reason why I made this channel was to kind of document my life post autism diagnosis, which was early last year. So I think it's important to talk about kind of big stuff that's happened along the way too, which includes the death of my little dog. And firstly, I just want to say thank you to everybody who left comments on the community post that I put up last week about Jean Paul. I know that Ian and I have found them really comforting, particularly to know that others out there know how we're feeling, because it's really difficult to describe at times. So thank you ever so much for that. And I don't really want this video to be kind of maudling at all. It's really for me to kind of document how I'm feeling and basically to make some observations of how I've been feeling over the last week, because now I know that I'm autistic. I have this new kind of reference point to be able to, try and see through in terms of how I experience feelings and life and everything like that, really, if that makes any sense. So Jean Paul made it to 11 and a half, and over the last year he's been in palliative care essentially because he was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and he had an eye operation. So we had a pirate pup for a year, and he was doing really, really well in terms of his care over the last year. But it was really since the clocks went back, or daylight savings, that he just was never able to recover from that kind of hour difference, really. So yeah, he just seemed really discombobulated, and he was having accidents a lot more, and stuff like that, really. So we did notice a decline in his health over the last few weeks, and we had various conversations about when the time might be right to let him go. And that's obviously with vet's intervention, but he made that decision for us, really, which I'm really grateful for. And he passed last Wednesday morning with Ian and I by his side. So it was a really profound kind of moment, really. It was in equal parts peaceful and brutal. And I've had, various experiences of death in my life, human death. My mum died when I was a child, and my dad's when I was in my late 20s, and various aunts and uncles. So, I'm well versed with death, if you like, as are many people my age. It's a common experience for someone my age to go through, but I wasn't prepared really for how profound the moments of death is or was, because it's not something I'd experienced in terms of witnessing somebody pass. So he didn't pass alone, and he had us kind of talking to him and holding him and stuff. So that felt very special. And there were moments where his eyes moved ever so slightly, and I just hoped that he knew that we were there with him. It was almost like a flicker of recognition, and I desperately hope he knew. But yeah, it was really difficult. But I've noticed that since Jean Paul's left us, I'm having such a difficult time with routine or lack thereof, because that's what a whole dog's shtick is all about. Their whole lives are centered around routine, because it's essential to a dog to know what's going on at any given time of the day. So it's really difficult for me because I feel almost kind of rudderless, because routines are so important to me, and they have been actually over recent years, particularly since I entered perimenopause. I noticed that this need for routine has, really kind of ramped up, and it's become so important to my daily life or my weekly life. I need to know what's going on and what's to be expected of the day, and when that's you know shifted in some way, yeah, it's really difficult because I'm really struggling to know what day of the week it is at the moment, and I really don't like it at all. And I think it's also really important to mention about kind of hierarchy of death, because I think many people think that human death is the most meaningful, and it's at the top of the list really. But as an autistic person, and as a person whose world is really small, as many chronically ill and disabled people's worlds are, when you have one person or one creature removed from that small world, it makes such a difference. It's really noticeable, and for me, in terms of how I've been feeling over this last week, there's no discernible difference from a human death just because John Paul was a dog. I know some people won't understand this, but if you've got a real connection with an animal, as I had with John Paul, he's certainly the most connected I've ever been with an animal. That when that's taken away, it's there's no real difference at all. I admittedly can't remember conversations that I had with John Paul because he was a dog, but I certainly remember moments that we shared, and moments where we were really connected. And it was no means a perfect dog, because he was really annoying for a lot of his life, because that's how he was. He was really stubborn and a real character. But we were really connected, and now that relationship is gone, it's really difficult. So I just wanted to share that with those of you who are also connected with animals, whether they're here or whether they've passed, because I think it's really important to say that it doesn't matter that they were an animal. If you've had that connection, or do have that connection with an animal, that's all that matters. And lastly, I just wanted to share with you a moment that I had the following day after Jean Paul died, because I didn't sleep very well that night at all, actually. I only had a few hours. But the following afternoon, I had a little lay down, as I often do in the afternoon. I really struggle with fatigue, but I think I'd had a nap maybe for about half an hour or so. But I was listening to Blind Boy's podcast because I find his voice really comforting. And I had to close my eyes, but I was definitely not asleep. And I do need to say that I was awake. But as somebody who has a bit of aphantasia going on, which means that you can't hold images in your mind very easily. Basically, I can conjure up images, but they don't last very long. They're really fleeting, which as an artist is really frustrating. I'd love to be able to have the ability to conjure an image and hold it in my mind, and maybe move it around and see an object from different perspectives, but I'm not able to do that. Although interestingly, I do see visuals in dreams, so I guess the ability is there somehow, but to be able to actually conjure an image in the moment, I'm just not able to do very easily. But anyway, I had my eyes closed, but I reiterate, I was definitely awake, and I had an image of Jean Paul's face appear right in front of me, and it took up my whole kind of field of vision. And it was an image from him very recently, so it was his old self. But I cannot tell you how super high definition this image was, and it was there certainly for a few seconds, and it was almost like he was there, and he then turned to the left or his right, and as he did that, the image kind of dissipated and just disappears really. But I was almost able to see every hair on his face. It was just such a bizarre moment. And I know that many people, after somebody dies, kind of look for signs after, they go. And it was really comforting to me. But as to whether it was a sign or whatever, I don't know. I don't know if it's our neurons and, hormones at play that are able to conjure up an image like that. But I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I know that I found it deeply comforting. It was almost like him saying goodbye, really. And as I say, there may be some scientific reason for that happening, but I'm comforted at least to know it did happen. I had that kind of final vision of him, and yeah, for that I'm really grateful. Sorry, I don't know if I went a bit out of focus there. I don't really fancy repeating this conversation because I would rather, keep it candid and real and stuff. So yeah, apologies if it all went a bit blurry. But I think that's going to be it for today. As I say, I just wanted to capture some thoughts and put them in a video, and I may well make this video private at some point because I don't know. I don't know if very many people are going to want to watch it, but for me it was just important to mark this moment and to look back on at some point if I need to. So thank you for listening if you're still here, and sending so much love to anybody out there who can relate to what I've shared today. If you've lost your pets, family members too, it really stings, doesn't it? And yeah, sending you a big hug, or a big virtual hug, because I absolutely know how it feels. It's just horrible. And I feel like pets grief isn't talked about enough, really. It's almost hidden away, isn't it? Because I say there seems to be this hierarchy over grief where human grief is right at the top and animals kind of fall under there somewhere. But for me, that's certainly not true. I feel like I've absolutely lost a family member, really. And yeah, it's going to take some time to get over, I imagine. And Ian feels similarly, absolutely. Yeah, it's really difficult. But anyway, I think that's where I'm going to end it. So thank you for listening, and I shall see you again soon.